There's something almost magnetic about certain phrases people use. They sound harmless, even friendly, but they're actually little landmines waiting to go off. Imagine someone saying, "Just trust me on this one," or "You wouldn't understand unless you're in the know." At first glance, it seems innocent, but these words are carefully designed to lower your guard and manipulate your thinking. The trap is rarely obvious. It hides behind politeness, urgency, or flattery, and most people walk right into it without realizing. Recognizing these phrases is like spotting the glint of a knife in someone's hand. Subtle, but life-saving if you pay attention. Often, these traps come disguised as advice, opportunity, or even compliments. A classic example is in business negotiations. Someone might say, "This deal is only for people who truly get it," which instantly makes you feel special and compelled to agree. In personal life, it could be a friend who says, "I only tell you this because I care about you," when really, they're trying to influence your decision. The key is to pause and ask yourself why these words, and why now. That tiny pause is often the difference between getting caught and staying free. It's also useful to pay attention to patterns rather than isolated phrases. People who repeatedly use language that pressures, shames, or appeals to fear often have a hidden agenda. For instance, if a colleague keeps saying, "Don't worry about it, just leave it to me," you might think they're being helpful, but repeated behavior like this could be a way to control the narrative or claim credit for your ideas. Spotting these traps early trains your mind to notice manipulation before it takes hold, setting the stage for the next level, understanding why we fall for them so easily. Humans are wired to respond to certain triggers, whether we realize it or not. Words like exclusive, urgent, or only for you tap into deep-seated psychological instincts: fear of missing out, desire for status, and the need for approval. These hooks are not random. They exploit patterns our brains have evolved to respond to. That's why even the most skeptical person can find themselves nodding along or making impulsive decisions when a well-placed phrase hits just the right nerve. Understanding these hooks is like having the map to a hidden maze. Once you know the paths, the traps become far easier to navigate. Think about it in everyday life. Marketing emails, office politics, or even social interactions often rely on the same triggers. A coworker saying, "This is confidential, just between us," immediately makes you feel chosen, but it's also a way to pull you into complicity. Even on social media, phrases like "only true fans will understand" pressure you to conform, comment, or share without thinking. By recognizing the psychological play behind the words, you start seeing the invisible strings that tug at your decisions, often without conscious awareness. The tricky part is that these hooks are subtle and often personalized. They exploit your values, fears, and desires, what Napoleon Hill might call shortcut into your subconscious mind. The more familiar you become with your own triggers, the easier it is to spot when someone else is trying to manipulate them. And once you understand this, you can anticipate the trap before it snaps, preparing the mind to respond deliberately rather than react impulsively. This sets the stage perfectly for spotting the red flags and subtle cues that hide these traps in plain sight. The real skill isn't just hearing the words, it's noticing what's left unsaid. Often, the most dangerous traps hide in pauses, hesitations, or oddly specific phrasing. A person might say, "I wouldn't normally tell you this," which sounds intriguing, but it's a classic signal they're trying to manipulate curiosity. These subtle cues are the fingerprints of hidden agendas, and learning to spot them is like developing a sixth sense. Once you start paying attention, you'll be surprised how many conversations have these hidden layers waiting to be uncovered. Body language and tone are equally revealing. A slight hesitation before a compliment, an overemphasis on urgency, or repeated insistence on secrecy can all be red flags. For example, a friend might say, "Trust me, this is going to work," while avoiding eye contact or fidgeting. These inconsistencies often betray the gap between words and intent. Noticing these signals early allows you to step back, question the motive, and avoid being led into a decision that isn't truly yours. Think of it as learning to read between the lines in a contract. You catch what's hidden before it becomes a problem. Another powerful approach is to watch for patterns over time. One-off phrases might be innocent, but recurring language that pressures, isolates, or appeals to fear is a clear warning. Maybe a coworker always uses flattery to push their ideas, or a friend repeatedly uses guilt to influence your choices. Recognizing these cues gives you a mental toolkit to evaluate situations critically, making it easier to protect yourself and respond wisely. And with that foundation, you're ready to move on to practical strategies that prevent these traps from working in the first place. The difference between falling for a trap and staying in control often comes down to a few simple habits. First, practice the art of pausing. Even a few seconds before responding gives your brain a chance to analyze the words, tone, and context. Instead of reacting immediately, take a breath and ask yourself, what is the real intention here? This tiny pause creates a buffer that prevents knee-jerk decisions, and it's a technique used by negotiators and top leaders to avoid manipulation. Another key strategy is asking clarifying questions. If someone says, "This is just between us," respond with, "Can you explain exactly what you mean?" Or, "Why now?" These questions shift the power dynamic, forcing the other person to reveal motives rather than letting them control the narrative. In real life, these simple lines can prevent you from agreeing to vague commitments, taking unnecessary risks, or getting emotionally entangled in someone else's agenda. Think of it as shining a flashlight into a dark room. You expose the hidden corners and see what's really there. Finally, build your personal rules and boundaries. Decide in advance what you will and won't accept, and practice asserting them calmly. A colleague trying to push a trap might insist, "Everyone else is doing it," but a firm, prepared response like, "I appreciate the suggestion, but this isn't aligned with my priorities," instantly neutralizes pressure. By combining pauses, clarifying questions, and solid boundaries, you create a shield against manipulation while staying composed, confident, and unshakable. This naturally leads to the next level, turning awareness into advantage. Once you recognize the trap and understand the psychological hooks, you gain more than just defense, you gain leverage. Awareness allows you to navigate conversations strategically, choosing when to engage, when to redirect, and when to walk away. For example, if someone tries to rush you into a decision with urgency, you can calmly acknowledge it while steering the situation on your terms. "I hear the urgency, but let's look at the facts first." Suddenly, what was meant to pressure you becomes an opportunity to showcase composure and authority. You can also use these insights proactively. In negotiations or team settings, knowing how words influence perception allows you to frame your own proposals in ways that motivate and persuade without deception. It's a subtle form of influence that doesn't compromise integrity. It's about being mindful of human psychology, just like chess masters anticipate several moves ahead. By understanding traps, you're no longer a passive participant. You become an active architect of the outcome, guiding interactions toward favorable results. Finally, this awareness builds long-term resilience. Each encounter teaches you more about patterns, motivations, and cues, making future traps easier to spot and exploit for positive gain. Over time, what once would have caused stress or poor decisions now becomes a playground for skillful interaction, confidence, and strategic thinking. And with this mastery, you're fully prepared to step back, reflect, and apply these lessons in every area of life, turning potential pitfalls into opportunities for growth and advantage. Imagine someone smiling at you and saying a few simple words, and suddenly you feel compelled to act only to realize later you walk straight into a trap. Sounds dramatic? It happens far more often than you think, and the scary part is, most people never even see it coming. Those seemingly harmless phrases are carefully crafted to exploit your instincts, your curiosity, and even your desire to feel special. What if I told you that recognizing just a handful of these words could save you from mistakes, manipulation, or missed opportunities sometimes before they even happen? Here's the twist. The very same trap that catches most people can become your secret advantage once you know how to spot it. You don't need to be paranoid or skeptical of everyone around you, you just need awareness. Awareness that transforms uncertainty into control, pressure into opportunity, and manipulation into strategic insight. By the end of this guide, you'll not only see the traps before they're set, but you'll know exactly how to respond, protect yourself, and even turn them to your advantage. So if you've ever felt pressured, tricked, or subtly controlled without knowing why, this is your wake-up call. The words that once snared you will no longer hold power. Instead, they'll become clues, tools, and signals that put you in the driver's seat of every interaction. And yes, some of them might surprise you because the traps are hidden in plain sight, in ways almost nobody expects. Now that you know how to spot the traps, understand the psychological hooks, and read the subtle cues, the next step is applying this knowledge in real life. Start small. Notice phrases in conversations, emails, or meetings that trigger your curiosity, fear, or urgency. Ask yourself, what's really behind these words? Over time, this practice will sharpen your instincts, making it nearly impossible for anyone to manipulate you without your awareness. Ask yourself tough questions. Have you ever agreed to something too quickly? Walked away feeling uneasy about a decision? These moments weren't coincidences, they were opportunities to learn. By reflecting on past interactions, you gain clarity and strengthen your ability to respond with intention, not reaction. The more you apply these strategies, the more confident and empowered you become in every area of life. Finally, take action today. Set boundaries, practice pauses, ask clarifying questions, and watch for recurring patterns. Share these insights with friends or colleagues, they'll thank you later. And if you want more tools to see through manipulation and gain control over your decisions, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Knowledge is power, but action turns awareness into mastery.